Thank you so much for inviting me here today. And let me start sharing my screen as I do so. And I'm hoping to talk for, a half an hour or so and then take questions. Um, as I take you through a kind of deep dive into one part of the ancient Maya world. And I want to start by setting the scene and thinking about where we are. And this is an unusual view in which we are looking, we're seeing Yucatan kind of turned on its side from the way that we typically see it in American maps. We're going to be talking today about the body and how we know what we know about the body. And this means that we're going to be looking at images in which human bones will appear. They will appear in the way in which they are published and displayed in Mexico and Guatemala, according to their legal system. If you are uncomfortable in seeing human bones as they are being excavated, you may want to turn off your screen for as I make reference to excavations. Right now, though, we're looking at the way the Maya world is surrounded by water and how this shapes how the Maya thought of the world they were in. And just to put us into context, I hope you can see and Sebastian, I can see you actually while I'm on the screen. So if you're receiving any messages from people about problems, I hope you'll wave at me and tell me that you're not seeing what I think you should be seeing.
Oh, I'll do semaphore. I'll do semaphore.
Fine, that's great. So where are we here in the Maya world, and what kind of places? You can see the little inset map over on the left. You can see Florida and Cuba between the Maya world, and places I'm going to mention. So there's Tikal. Here's Cancun, which back in the days when people took spring breaks was the most popular destination for undergraduates in Northeastern universities in the United States. Chichen Itza is a place they typically visited if they went to Cancun. And we're also going to be spending quite a bit of time at Palenque. And all of this is taking place, everything I'm going to show you today is taking place in the first millennium. And it's a time when I hope your Star Wars is up to date, because the rebel planet in Star Wars, in the original Star Wars, I have to say, I was sitting in the movie theater and I went, oh my God. They set the rebels at Tikal and at Temple One. But of course, the people who made the film weren't thinking about what was really in Temple One. And it's one of the places that has helped shape how we've learned about the Maya over the past now nearly 50 years of excavations. And the archaeologists in the beginning didn't really understand what would be in temples, why these pyramids would appear almost like mountains out of the rainforest. And when they discovered the burial within at the base of Temple One, they began to get a better idea. And now you're looking at a drawing of the burial. And I just draw your attention to the fancy goods that are inside the tomb, because in large part, we learn about life by looking at death. Death as a discrete moment archaeologically when a lot of fancy things are all deposited at once. And if you look at the far over on the left-hand side of your screen, you'll see that there's something mosaic-y looking with a bunch of cut shells beside it. Number 28. keep your eye on that and remember that this was in the tomb. And if you look up at the far right-hand side of your screen, you can get a sense that all of this was laid out on a beautiful mat. And then we're looking at a kind of drop-off alleyway up at the top where there are just vessels. And those are probably fancy foodstuffs that someone then backed out of the tomb, placing all of these things, just as I'm backing out with never turning their back to the dead king buried here. So these things that were in the tomb, only the things that are truly not perishable, because we're in a part of the rainforest where almost everything will rot. And it is really a testament to the quality of the sealed chamber. And you can see that there is about 20 pounds of jade jewelry that was on this deceased ruler. And the shells that are in the tomb are really fantastic because they're that spiny oyster that I showed you at the beginning. I'll show you it again in just a second. But we also learn that they're often this sense of bringing shells from the Atlantic and the Pacific, so that and we're looking at a burial, again, one that was flooded, when the burial was created, there was a sense that the body was in the middle of the world, that the human who died was at the very center, and that the human who had died was surrounded by a watery world, and placing human beings at the center. So you're looking here at a tomb, a painted tomb, after everything else has been cleared out, and it's dug right into the bedrock, and it's painted with an inscription. So one of the ways we also know things about the Maya is because we have very detailed texts that are beautifully correlated and perfectly correlated in many cases to the European calendar. So in fact, in this one, we've mainly been looking at things from the 8th century, but in this one, it says the king is born, probably meaning reborn, in our year of 419, being reborn through this world of water. And you imagine how birth coming out of the placenta, the sense of the watery world returning to this kind of womb. And those little dots on the side of the painted chamber are showing us that we're in the water. Well, the offerings that are placed in the tomb show us this watery world, a kind of microcosm of the Maya universe. Now, one very interesting thing about all Mesoamerican peoples, all the peoples of Mexico, ancient and modern peoples of Mexico and Central America, is that they understand that there are 5 directions in the world. So just as I might be looking, and I'm about to turn so that I'm looking due west, there is always west, regardless of where you are, so that the direction of center that the Maya understand as the pivot of the universe is also always present. And wherever the body of the king or the queen, of the royal person is, we are in the center, with all the cardinal points surrounding us. And the offerings that are placed in the tomb, a number of them include these, the sense of coming out of the water. And yet, so we have these cormorants, these fishing birds, and they're sucking the fish off the lid of the vessel, turning it into 3 dimensions. So they're really playing with the way that of representation of these creatures. And those are peccaries, wild boars, that support the universe down deep in the underworld, and there they are, snout down. And the one on the right is really very charming because they've turned the firing holes into the kind of mouth of the snouty peccary. And you see these little dots on vessels. These are both from Tikal, that where we've just been. And you can see the dots that are showing us the watery world. And the bird on the left is actually floating on top of a turtle, another notion of the underworld. Now, and the surface of the earth. One of the things we also know is, and we experience as we learn things about the Maya, is there's not just one Maya, that there is no central authority, there's no Rome. And so we see different expressions of the belief system and some variation, including the supernatural world in which the Maya understood governed humanity and was like humanity. And you can see sometimes that the shared belief system, but with emphasis on one God or another in different places. We're about to take a look into the Temple of Inscriptions at Palenque because we know more about King Pakal than we do for almost any other Maya king. We know a lot about his life. We know that he dies in 683. And we know that he built this fantastic pyramid before he died as his own memorial. He built it in 9 distinct levels that would replicate the levels of the underworld, so that a body that was the dead king being carried up these stairs would be passing all the way into the underworld. And then he would have been carried down a mysterious internal staircase that was rediscovered in 1952 by Mexican archaeologists. Now, it's just an interesting historiographic note. That is to say, how is it that we know what we know, and what were people thinking at the time? Is that at the time that this was found, people couldn't read Maya hieroglyphic inscriptions except for the dates. And they didn't know that the Maya had been ruled by people who considered themselves to be like gods. They did not understand that there had been Maya rulership, the specificity of Maya culture, one of the great imaginative, independent cultures to arise on the surface of planet Earth, shared many self-interested, self-promoting, even at times greedy instincts that we associate with all the rest of humanity as well. So when this was discovered, the archaeologist was standing at the top of this temple, and the staircase was entirely filled in. He had no idea. The Mexican archaeologist who led this team had no idea what he would find. And it took him a few years to get all the way down to the base of the pyramid, where he found himself as if he were standing on the ground level and looking with this almost X-ray view. And when and on the screen in front of you is the surface of the sarcophagus lid that he found staring at him. And he didn't know what it was. Never found a Maya sarcophagus, had never been found before. And when it was opened and revealed, they found that inside this almost womb-like setting, again, we are looking at the bones as they were uncovered revealed in 1952. They found that they were looking at this, and this is a reconstruction, an extraordinarily tall person for the ancient Maya, I'll tell you how tall in just a second. Um, Covered in jade and very well preserved by and large, given that um, even although they didn't know what the hieroglyphs meant, they could read the dates and they knew that it was something that had happened in 683. Well, let's look. We now know this is King Pakal. Let's look at some of the things we know about King Pakal. This head, which I don't know a single archaeologist who does not believe that this is the portrait, an idealized portrait of King Pakal. It was ripped off an architectural setting somewhere at the site, we don't know where, and wedged under the sarcophagus at the time that the whole tomb was sealed up. And it tells us a number of things about King Pakal. Pakal means shield. He also has an epithet. He was known as Flower Shield. And you see a beautiful little blossom here on his forehead. He lived to be 80 years old, and he suffered a lot of wear and tear in that life. So this is a kind of youthful and idealized Pakal. So what is his ideal look? Why is he beautiful? And how do we understand what beauty was for the Maya? And as it has emerged, and I particularly want to give a shout out to a colleague who's not here today, but teaches nearby at Riverside, Carl Tauba, who figured out a lot of really cool things about the Maya maze god back in the 80s. And this is the Maya maze god as he was set. And I actually would like to use the transgender pronoun as they were set, because the Maya maze god has characteristics of all genders embedded in them. The Maya maze god, this example, once was at the top of a building, and there were a whole series of them, and they were growing out of beautiful maize plants. And what you see growing out the back of the head is the maize foliage, so that the face is like the cob of the maize plant. And you'll see the hands in this gesture of movement. So the maize god is constantly moving like the maize plant itself. Now, if we take a good look at King Pakal, we notice a number of things that show that he is framed here like the maize god. The maize god has, and this has gorgeous, thick, abundant hair. And this is because I'll show you about the maize plant itself in just a minute. So I want you to notice the hair. Then I want you to notice the nose, because you notice how it goes all the way up here into the forehead. The longer, straighter, and larger the nose, the more beautiful. We know that at the time that of birth, babies were put on cradle boards and their heads reshaped to be slightly tapered as in order to be the shape of the maize cob, and that a jade bead was often dangled here between the eyes so that the baby would become would easily cross eyes, and I'm about to do it now in front of you, so that too is a characteristic of the maize god. The maize god often has teeth inlaid with green pieces of jade. And so you get a sense of this is what beauty looks like. And of course, it doesn't conform in any way to our canons of beauty, but we can see how this is a beautiful and idealized representation. Well, why maize? Why focus on maize? Why should maize be at the heart of Maya beauty? And this is maize that is sitting in a water and either lime or ash. When I mean lime, I don't mean a citrus fruit. I mean the quicklime you get that you might use, in fact, to mark a baseball field. Lime, um, lime and ash, when the maize kernels are soaked, maize becomes a nutritious protein. And this was discovered and manipulated by indigenous peoples from Central America up across what is today the United States. Interestingly enough, never developed in Peru. But if you do this and you use this to make your tortilla and your tamale, a maize tortilla or tamale has proteins, half the proteins that you need in a normal diet. And when eaten with black beans, a full protein. So a perfect vegetarian meal. And you think of the masa itself for making a tortilla or making a tamale. And in Maya belief system, the gods formed humans out of maize, out of the dough. So that's why maize. And let's look at the plant itself. So you may think it's annoying that there's all this corn silk in your sweet corn. And the reason is that each kernel needs a piece of silk in order to pollinate. And so a beautiful silky ear of corn is indication of a robust set of kernels underneath. And this is a painting not from outside the Maya region, where you see the dream ideal of a plant of maize in which there's cob after cob, and you can even see the breakdown of the regular rows in the heads, and how the head has been shaped to be like this gorgeous ear of maize. And then there is the very color of maize. Maize is multicolored, and the Mesoamerican peoples understood that these were all the colors of human flesh, that they are, it is red if you cut it, it is blue if you look at it through your skin. You see blood moving, you see all the colors that we have inside us are the colors of maize. Maize is harvested when it is when it's dry, and the tassel plays an important role. I think I won't belabor that right now. But the maize god himself is like this young dancing maize when it's green. And here's the maize god in dancing form, adorned with jade jewelry. The maize god is also a poet and a writer, and does arithmetic easily as well. So the maize god is, we see the maize god here in this highly representational Maya art of the 8th century. And you can see how shaped the head is, and all of this luxuriant characteristics of the maize god. He's writing in a book, by the way. There are a lot of illustrations of books. There are only 4 Maya books that survive because they were vulnerable to simply rotting. And then there were the ones that were in use at the time of the Spanish invasion were by and large rounded up and burned. Now, the maize god has a whole life because maize has a cycle. So in order to get to that point of harvest, and that is understood as the decapitation of the plant. And then the maize plant is planted annually. And he has a whole life. He has kids. He has his sons who are here, the one with spots on the left and the one with jaguar pelt on his skin on the right. And they're watering him and bringing him back to life as an annual deity. And this would have been a plate probably used for tamales as well. You'll see that he's coming out from a turtle shell, and that is one of those concepts of the earth. And when we turn and we see what a Maya mirror looks like, and they made mirrors out of pyrites, an iron ore, we might think of it as being fool's gold or obsidian. So we're looking at a very fragmented mirror. You would not get a clean, crisp image of yourself from it. We see mirrors often in use at court on the upper left. We also see, and you will remember that I told you to keep your eye on the mirror at the bottom of at the base of the tomb. So the king would have looked um, as he was being reborn, he would have looked into his mirror and been reborn from the surface of the turtle shell. Now, every superhero needs a nemesis and needs a rival. And the maze god certainly has one. And here he is. And look, you can just see that he's a very different kind of character. He is the tobacco dealer. Tobacco is a plant indigenous to the Americas. And the Maya, even at the time of the Spanish invasion, were known as the great purveyors of the Maya word is tsiga. So if you hear something familiar in that, well, there you go. It's one of the Maya words used in English, cigar. So here he is, he's puffing away. He's always lost his teeth. And he is and then I just want to say he's totally a creep as well. On this vessel, he's with 5 very young women. That's who he is. That's the rival to the maze god. And to a certain degree, he's the person he's the character who manages maze. He's the god of trade and tribute. So, and he has fantastic clothes, beautiful textiles. And I just want to draw your attention to the fact at the bottom of the screen, I hope you can see it, there is a rabbit who is writing away in a book, as if to say, I got this down. I'm writing this Zoom will be recorded. And the rabbit is, we learn from other scenes and other parts of the story that the rabbit is a terrible trickster. And the rabbit, in fact, will be one of the ways that God-El meets his demise. Idealized Maya beauty never ages, but there are gods who get very, very old. They lose their teeth, they lose their hair, they become a wrinkled mess. Pakal, as he's depicted at age 80, is perfect, young, ideal. I sometimes like to joke to people that, as you start gaining wrinkles, you must be becoming more divine as time goes on. So it's our friend the rabbit who is often at the ready to help the maze god, whom you see here on the right, take down his rival. And look what's happening here. He's losing his loincloth. He's lost his hat, and his fancy threads are in the hands and the arms of the maze god's helper at the left. And a lot of this seems to have a kind of natural analog in the maze plant itself. So if you go to a market where you can really get the fresh maize mushroom, the corn mushroom, it is a fungus which will take over about 1 out of 200 maize plants in the field. It never takes them all. It doesn't change them all, ruin them all. And this is a very delicious mushroom, but it will tend to get into all the ears on a single plant. And the Maya seem to have understood this as the characteristics. This is a great one, and it's blue, and it's delicious if you've ever eaten the, it's called huitlacoche, the maize mushroom. And it may, in fact, be part of the way, again, that humans are understood to come in different forms. The very little ones the ones with um, bodies that are not the perfect bodies of the maize deity itself, but rather the full range of human representation. And I also wanted you just to see this pot. It's really one of my favorites. It's very large. There are all kinds of foodstuffs under the throne. Look at the manicure of the figure sitting on the throne. Very plush cushions that this ruler is leaning against. And then this ability of the Maya to show you things that are happening off screen, the representation of sound that's taking place, being made by people who are not being fully represented. This is a remarkable art style. And the world of King Pakal was one in which the Maya were literate. They were writing down their conquests, their war exploits, their ability of one city-state to defeat another, their marriage negotiations, the complexity of trying to build a polity that would be successful, both through marriage alliances and through outright political conquest. But it all lay within there is this very strong sense that individual rulers played a critical role in both the in both the management of their own representation and their own ability to live the life of the maize god. So Palenque, just to pull out for a minute and give you the big view, this temple has all kinds of interesting waterworks underneath. You'll remember we started this talk by being in a watery world. That's Pakal's palace that is in the foreground. And I look forward to the day when maybe some of you on the screen and I will even travel back to Palenque, truly one of my most favorite places on earth. To be able, you can't go down and visit Pakal's tomb, but you can stand outside with the images on your iPad and feel as though you are almost there. And then you can walk into his palace and see the world he surveyed. It is a place of water, and you can see all the water coursing through this site. It is a place where the world seems to begin, and that there is water that is springing up from the ground, and where life ends and takes its next step, only to be renewed as the maize god, season in, season out, year in, year out. And so many of the temples are designed to crest just above tree line so that they have this powerful sense of beacon to us today. So I'm going to end it right there.